Hello, good morning, everyone. I thank you for attending this webinar today. We have some really great content and a number of demos to show you. We're pretty excited about what we're able to do in the future of development, and so we'll get right into it today. Um, I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully, everybody can see it here. Good. It says it's active here, and so we'll go ahead and get started. Today's session is really going to be for power users, plugin developers, anybody who's looking for some sort of on-demand environment through their web browser, any power users who are looking to increase collaboration, instructors from universities looking to simplify examples and tests. So our factory capability is going to support all those different elements that are there. 5 minutes talking about the background of Codenvy. We make software as a service developer environments. As part of this, we help eliminate inefficiencies and constraints in software development. The primary thing that we solve is that we eliminate the time that is lost due to configuring environments either through manual tasks, executing scripts, doing VM-based images. There's a lot of effort that goes into setting up those environments, and there's even more effort that goes into synchronizing projects and plugins, whether it's from a branch, a commit ID, or some older version that's there. Our company is about a year old. We were started in 2013. We've got 40 employees based in 2 countries. We have a few different products that we sell in the marketplace here. And we've started to line up some really interesting technology customers like Google, Atlassian, WSO2, and Exo Platform as well. We believe that the biggest pain point in the market is this. This is a tutorial around how to set up Eclipse with Tomcat and Java. I mean, this is one of the most simplest configurations on the planet, and this is what it takes to get going with it. This is obviously rather complicated. This is a waste of time. There's no need to do all this work. And so it's no wonder that there was this interesting study done from LinkedIn with 1,200 engineers about a year ago now, and they reported that they spend about 13 hours a week just dealing with administration tasks on their desktops. And those issues really come from configuring projects, changing branches, switching between tasks, the context switch, updating your tools and plugins, and then just dealing with environmental technical debt. As an environment ages over time, it gets harder to reconfigure that and to get it set up again. So that leads us to factories. Codenvy Factories is our way of dealing with that problem space. And essentially what a factory does is it takes all that configuration, which was manual with high failure rates, and it simplifies it down to a single click, a URL. And as a result of this, the setup cycle can be fully automated. It tends to be shorter. It becomes incredibly predictable, meaning you're following automation there. And then it becomes testable and part of a continuous delivery process as well, because everything is scriptable. What is a factory? A Codenvy factory is a URL to launch a temporary on-demand developer environment. The new environment contains an IDE, there's a project space, there's code, there's a builder system, a debugger, and a set of plugins inside of it. So everything is fully configured. So with that, let's just do a demo of a factory here. I have installed on my system here the Codenvy CLI. The CLI is something we haven't shipped yet, but we'll make it available probably in about a week here. Almost everything that we can do can operate without the CLI, but it's just kind of fun to use it for a variety of reasons on a demo here. But I've got the CLI installed, and it provides a number of commands. But the first one that it does is that it takes in a JSON file, and we've got some JSON files stored on our servers here, and I'm just going to grab one, your first factory .json, and I'm just going to run our CLI with it, and it spits out this kind of ugly looking URL that's here. So what's in that URL? We'll talk about that in a moment. If I just add this extra command launch, it's generating the same URL, and it's then invoking that URL inside of the browser. And essentially what's happening here is that URL contains a recipe and a set of configuration properties for how to set up this project space. So it's created an on-demand environment. It has loaded a project space. It's created a welcome message over here on the right, and it's also created an anonymous user. Now I'm logged in here, right? But I could have been either logged in or not logged in. And so in fact, if I just go ahead and log out real quick, so we're all logged out, and I come back over here and do the same thing again, it's recreating a different temporary workspace. And this time it's creating a temporary workspace, and you're going to see in the upper right corner that it doesn't know who I am. And it's going to ask me, if I want to log in at that point in time. So it's cloning the project space again, and you can see over here on the right that it's, hey, I don't know who you are. Would you like to log in or create a free account? So that is a very simple sort of environment. I can come over here. I can actually say run this application. So even though I'm not logged in, I can build the project. I can run it. I can open particular files here, and so it's a fully functional environment at this point. So we'll trust that runs, but I'm going to come back over here, and that's kind of the start of what we've done. So a couple of details, right? So a factory can be launched without authentication of users. So we've seen that, and then what it does is it creates a temporary developer environment. What happens there is that any sort of idle activity or closing the browser tab will lose the work. And so if you want to, you can copy the work that you do in this temporary workspace into your named account. So the URL that was generated, you can see it had this temp designation. And so that temp designation was, hey, we've got a temporary environment here. And if we were to have gone back to our browser, if I were to log in, I will connect with Google, connect with my Google OAuth credentials here. and so now I'm authenticated. It's now reopening the very same temporary workspace. I can open this temporary workspace, and now it gives me the choice of would I like to copy this to my workspace. And so now I'm still in the temporary environment, but if I select that button, it can take the entire snapshot of that project and anything that I've done with it and move it into my permanent named account. And so now it's no longer temporary, now it's permanent, and it will live there forever on that. And so it's loading the project, and you can see that it's opened it up here. And since I already have a sample Spring project, it appended a modifier _2 to it. Okay, all right. So we just demonstrated that you can copy the project into their named workspace. Works great. You want to make sure and do that before you lose any of your changes there. And so here's what's going on. So the workflow here is that if you're an ISV or an instructor or some other person, you first publish the factory. You can then publish that. It's a URL, so you can publish it anywhere that URLs go. And then some user will click on it. And then what Codenvy is doing is we're running through this workflow on the far right. There's a sequence. We document the sequence of steps that we take inside of our documentation there. And then when we're done with it, we've created a new URL, right, which represents the temporary workspace. And developer keeps wanting me to activate that. Then developers can use that workspace. Every time a developer clicks the factory, a new workspace is created. So one factory can create 10, 100, thousands of temporary workspaces off of it. At the same time, Codenvy then tracks all the events inside of the environment, and so and we can report on those events and then allow the publisher to track and optimize what's happening. let's now move a little bit into, okay, this is kind of interesting. I want to create my own factories. How do I do it? Well, there are 3 ways for a user to create factories inside of Codenvy. The first thing is that it's in the IDE with the wizard. So if I go back into the IDE, you need to be logged in. So we're logged in here. I've got a project open, and I can come to the share window, and there's a factory URL here. And what this brings up is a 2-stage wizard, and for creating this URL. So the first thing is that all the properties that I may want to be able to set are here. And so there's a bunch of different properties, and we'll talk about each of these. And after I set those properties, you click Next, and it generates a bunch of URLs. So here's the factory URL that I can use. There's also a way to embed it on websites, or you can embed it on GitHub pages as well. And there you go. That creates the template for it. All right, I'm going to close this. The second technique is that you can manually construct a non-encoded URL. So you can either do this by hand, or you can do it with the Codenvy CLI. A non-encoded URL is real simple. There's a URL format. You can see codenvy.com/factory, and then you do a question mark, and then you can have a whole series of properties separated by ampersand here. And there's like over 30 different properties that you can set. And if you do all that, Codenvy will honor that as an endpoint, and it will process those for you. And that is exactly what we did in our original example here. So if we come back to the simple one, what it did is it grabbed that JSON file, the configuration properties, and then it generated a non-encoded URL. And so you can see it /factory, and it generated all the properties against it there. Now, you can either manually construct it, or if you're using the CLI can take a JSON file as input with those properties, and it will interpret those JSON properties and create it for you. So as an example of that, we have a public repository, Codenvy/factories, and I'm just going to open up one of these. Here's a Firebase factory, and so you can see in here that we have a JSON file. There's a whole variety of properties in here, and so there's a property names and the values of that. And so all the CLI is doing is it's taking this file, converting it to the non-encoded format, and then making it available there. The third tactic is that you can call a REST API to return an encoded URL with your parameters stored on our servers and hashed. And so in this case, it's a very tiny URL. You can see that there's just a hash code on it. And on top of that, all of your parameters are stored on our servers. And there's a bunch of advanced parameters that you can use with encoded URLs. So if I go back to the very same demo that we've been doing, I can do encoded here added as an option. And this time it's taking, oh, got a little, gave me an error because I'm using the wrong factory. Okay, there's invalid properties in there. So I'll just do spring.json. Grab a different one. And there we go. This time, you can see that it generated a hash code. I can grab this real quick, put it in my browser, and now it's launching a new environment, new workspace. This is a Spring project, so it's cloning another Spring app here. It's going to open up in a second. There we go, sample Spring project, and there you have it. Right. So that's an encoded factory. In order to work with the encoded factory, obviously you have to have an account. Our REST API requires tokens, so you have to first authenticate behind the scenes, and the CLI takes care of those steps for you on that. So great. So we just did the demo on the non-encoded versus the encoded factory, and we'll move on. Why are people using factories? What are the use cases for this? So there's training use cases. where instructors like to create an example and then give it to all their students so that each student gets a copy of their own example. There are sales demos where you can take your code and embed it on a website so that you can have a POC or a demo scenario with an IDE. You can use it for marketing purposes. You can put it in front of an API and make it as a demo or proof of concept or a sample app scenario. You can use it to facilitate collaboration. So instead of sharing a single environment, you can make clones of that environment using factories and pass them around. You can embed them in blogs. You can use them for support purposes here. We have some great customers who are using factories, and we can give you this presentation, and you can click on each of these links. Each of these links have some really fantastic demos for it. In the case of Espresso Logic, I actually want to go ahead and just click this right now. And these guys, they make a really cool REST API on front of a SQL database. And so they have this demo app that they've created here. And so you can come to the database. You can see that they've got, a live database with a schema map related to it. And then, you can click on the demo app, and the demo app is a Codenvy factory embedded in their site, pre-mapped to their REST API. So it's been configured for that. It can actually run, and it gives you the link here, and you can run this application, which is a real live JavaScript application calling a REST API that then maps into a SQL database there. So that's all done using factories on that. So that's pretty cool. The second thing is Google. Google uses it with Google MBS. Google MBS is their mobile backend service. You go through this complicated wizard to generate a new system. It has server-side components and Android components, and then you can edit those projects through a factory automatically, and they embed the factory on their site. WSO2 App Factory product, they have hosted Git repositories that are private, and so for each one of those repositories, they let you edit the code, and they launch a factory. So they create an on-demand environment. The environment behind the scenes authenticates itself, and then you can basically make changes and push it back to App Factory. And with Intuit, Intuit uses this for QuickBooks Online. They have a very extensive plugin development framework for their partners, and so you can build those plugins using Codenvy Factories, all without having to install anything. So really great demos. When you get this deck, you can click through these and watch them all. So this gets to the point of, okay, that's how you create Codenvy Factories. What kind of customization can you do? And there's a lot. So the first is that you can link factories onto your code repository. So the contents of the project tree will load from a version control system. Today that's just Git, but we're going to have Subversion support really soon. The clone can come from either a public or a private repository. If it's a private repository, we actually do an OAuth exchange with the private Git repo behind the scenes. And we just ask the user, do you grant us permissions for this? So we can make it really simple. And WSO2 is an example of a vendor that has done that. You can grab from a particular branch or a commit ID. And even now, starting this week, we have support for ref specs for Garrett Forge. And so you can grab a particular review version as well. So you can clone from any of these different branches that's there. And so then on top of that, after you source where to clone from, you can then instruct Codenvy to pre-populate our Git system with the configuration of the source. So if you have this VCS info equals true, when the environment opens, the Git menu will be pre-populated back to the source Git repository. So you can just say Git commit Git push, and it'll push right back to the same branch that it sourced from there. Okay. The next thing you can do is there are post-load actions for files and macros. So one of the things we provide is a set of actions that after the project is open, what would you like to do? And then one of those items is that you can specify a particular file in the tree to have opened in the editor. And a little bit later this year, we'll actually give you a macro language, and so you can instruct us to execute a macro of command palette commands that execute a variety of functions. So you could trigger a build, you could say launch the debugger, you could set a breakpoint, you could package up the files for zip. But if you can do it inside the IDE, there will be a macro language that you can execute for that as well. You can also change the welcome message. So you can provide a custom welcome message, and the welcome message is in the window on the right. You can change the title, you can change the content, and you can also use different messages for authenticated or non-authenticated users there. And we'll give a demo of this in just a second. It's actually pretty cool. Now, in order for this to work, you have to have a valid org ID, and an org ID is a code that we use for accounts that have special privileges. So you have to be on an upgraded account to get this capability, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end here. The last thing that can be customized here as part of this is that you can do parameterized factories. And with parameterized factories, what it does is it performs a find replace of variables after the environment is created. And so inside the factory JSON, you could basically specify which variables to find and what values to replace them with. And you need this for any situation where the value of the code or the structure of the code needs to change on every click. And so you're either replacing values related to the environment variables, values related to the users, values related to HTTP referrers, or other details that are specific to the environment at the time where the user is clicking on it. So we have an example here where the user has a set of files that they're searching for, and then the entries in those files and how they're going to be replaced on that. Then last but not least, if you're on one of our upgraded subscription types, you can also set restrictions. So you can actually define who has access to the factory. So valid since and until are dates. You can restrict by host name. You can restrict by password. And you can also restrict the number of clicks. So you can use these for exams. Maybe you have a limited time window where you want an exam question to be available. You can use these for sales. So if you really want to make sure that only your prospects are accessing the factory and not everybody, a lot of policies there. So with this, what I'm going to do is we have in our repository of factories here. Sorry, too far back. Where's our factories? Here we go. Factories. Down here on the bottom, we've got a super factory. And inside this super factory is a large JSON file with all the different types of properties that can be configured on it. There is a custom welcome screen. There is a particular Git conversion here. It has an open file to be had. It's using an org ID, so it's an upgraded account for it. And it also is doing some parameterization down here as well. So we'll come back to our trusty URI. We will do an encoded factories for super factory here. Make sure that that works. Aha, we got our factory URL. Great. Just copy this. We'll run this here. And boom, here we go. And now, what it's got is it's creating a temporary environment. It's going to have a custom welcome message on the right. It's going to have a special file that's open in the middle. And there we go. So you can see on the far right over here that I'm going to drag this open here. We loaded some HTML. It changed the title up here. It changed the icon on it. It loaded our technical support page on the far right with that. It had the greetingcontroller.java file opened up in the middle, right? It changed the name of the project over here on the left, and it had everything open. And this can actually, all right? So super factory, right? The next thing is that so that's the sort of things you can do with the factory itself. Beyond this, since it's a URL, we've created some nice button images. These are animated buttons. This is on our website and our docs, but there's these different formats that are available. We have buttons with counters, buttons without counters. We have logos that you can put. You can insert your logo into it. And when you do these, when you hover over the button, there's an animation that comes with it as well. So a nice animation that's there. You can embed these factories on other web pages. So you can iframe it. You can use an iframe tag. You can put the factory URL right in the middle here. And when you put the factory right in the middle like that, it'll run inside of another web page, whether a blog or whatnot. As an example, I'm just going to come to a server here and just run this real quick. This is a marketing page for us that we have not released yet, but you can see that we talk about Codenvy being fast and secure developer environments, and it actually loads an embedded factory right here in the page. All right, so it's running in the page. You can see it's got the edges around it. It's very nice. There. All right. The next thing, we're almost done here, is that analytics and metrics on your factory usage. So Codenvy.com analytics, we have just put this out into production. This is a system where you can log in with your user account and you can get a whole range of metrics. We track everything that users do. You can get information about factories and projects, workspaces, users, and sessions, and there's a whole bunch of reports there. And so if you take one of those org IDs and assign it to your factories, you actually get group tracking. So you can track each individual factory and you can do group analytics around it as well. So if I come over here, I've got a page in analytics, and you can see some history here for this user account. I have my individual user account. I've been busy, and this is let me just do a week-long tracking here. And you can see the number of factories registered. This is how many times I use the REST API. You can see how many accounts have been created at Codenvy from factory sessions that I've registered, how many session events have occurred on it, and a bunch of other information as well. So you can do all this. You can also take your org ID. You can put it into this filter up here, search on organization, and it will filter down the results based upon a particular group and give you group reporting on that as well. So wrapping up our session this morning, what are our subscriptions for factories? So first, they're free for use. You can publish factories. You can use it however you see fit. The only things that are not free are those things that require an org ID. And we have a subscription called Tracked Factories for that. It's primarily for software vendors or professionals who really want to take their factories to the next level. With that, you can do the custom welcome screen, particularly with badging. We make sure that all your factory sessions go on dedicated hardware, so you get hardware that is dedicated to your factories and not shared with anyone else. You can use restriction policies. You gain access to analytics with the org ID filter, and then we will give you premium support and promote it on. We will promote it inside of our product and on our web page in the future as a featured factory. We also have the ability for those people who are really looking for an advanced system here. We have branded factories, which is we will run a completely separate, isolated Codenvy installation. It's your own cloud. It's your own branding. You own all the user account information, and you can also add in custom plugins. So a completely customized system that's tailored to basically your own user traffic and not integrated as part of the Codenvy whole. All right. We have some resources. We've got lots of examples on our GitHub project, so you can see a bunch of different configurations. We've got tons of documentation, including a detailed parameter reference spec, so that you can configure anything and know the exact rules for that, and just lots of explanation about the behaviors of how this system works. And with that, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to open up my panel here and see if there's any Q&A for the session.
Yeah, Tyler, we had one question come in a minute ago. When you're going over factories and then the difference with the branding, is the question is there a difference between the track factories and the branding, and then what's the pricing difference?
Yeah, the tracked factories, there's a range there. It depends upon how much anticipated traffic is going to be there, but it starts at $500 a month, and it goes up from there on all the tracked factories there. The branded factories, in that situation, it tends to be a true customization. There's probably going to be some plugins that are developed and deployed, and a rebranding of the system. That is in the thousands of dollars per month, and so that tends to be much more of a tailored implementation, and so we'd want to scope that out and give you a custom price quote on that.
Another question was about custom analytics, if they want to track a specific action in the ID. Is that possible?
So with our current system, we have about 150 events that we track. They're kind of standard events on it. We have a next generation system that's going to be shipping in Q2 that will have, I think it's about 600 events that we'll be tracking. If you want to do a custom event, we actually have the ability to let you write your own plugin, and that plugin can be loaded into the system, and so you will be able to designate whether that plugin loads or not inside of your factory, and inside that plugin you can then generate custom events, and all these events will be trackable in the analytics. For those people who are looking to learn a little bit more about our plugins, you could come to github.com/codenvy/SDK, which is, we've just put this on GitHub and opened the source code for it, which basically gives you instructions around how to write plugins for the system. So this is the source code repository. We also have docs.codenvy.com/SDK for the kind of the tutorials on how to write that as well.
And one last question here. I see this come up in some different webinars, is the support for different languages such as Go and stuff. I believe we have a link that shows like all the different icons that we have, if you want to show that, Tyler.
So I think, yeah, my screen's probably not showing anymore, is it? Let's see here. So today, in terms of what we support here, I think in some cases people think that our support is somewhat limited today. Now, in Q2, we've been working on a next generation system, and with that next generation system, it supports Docker files. And if you're not familiar with Docker files, what it does is it gives users a very fine-grained level of control over their environment, and so you can set up a debugger or a builder environment for virtually any language there, and we'll support that natively through our editor as well. So our current generation system was very inflexible because it uses Cloud Foundry, and it just doesn't give users the ability to provide the properties that they want. And so we're moving to a new system, and that's in testing now for us.
Okay, that's it as far as I have for questions. If you have your contact information, put it on screen. I'm Eric Cavazos. You can contact me at ecavazos@codenvy.com if you have any questions for me. And Tyler?
Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody attending the session today. Please send us your feedback. We'd love to hear some emails from you on what you need and how you might use this capability on your own.
Thank you.